This is nasty. Dead animals in some walls, mold all over the place. These are the conditions that military families say that they have been dealing with while living on a military base. Part of a systemic problem affecting families on installations around the country. Channel 2 Samantha Manning investigates that most of this housing is not run by the military, but by private companies with lengthy contracts.
From leaky ceilings to mold in nearly every room.
My children have been breathing this in.
To this disturbing discovery by an inspector.
She found dead animals in my wall vents and cavities.
These families say life in military housing at Fort Belvoir in Virginia has been filled with frustration and fear. Brianna Bragg's husband is in the Army, and they have 2 young kids. Rachel Vidot's husband is in the Air Force. They have 5 kids, ages 9 and under.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
Both women tell me they had to live in these conditions for more than a month before they were placed in temporary housing. Like so many military families, they rely on a housing allowance from the military, and they can't afford to move off base.
Why is it acceptable for us to live in these situations when my husband has deployed 7 times?
Even though these military families live in housing on the base itself, it's actually run by a business contracted through the military. A private company called the Michaels Organization is in charge of managing these homes. That company is now being sued by some other Fort Belvoir residents over similar housing complaints. It's a problem impacting other bases run by different companies, too. Earlier this year, a Senate investigation exposed ongoing problems at privatized military housing.
It's just not fair.
The Michaels Organization declined our request for an on-camera interview. In a statement, a spokesperson told us in part, quote, Fort Belvoir residential communities and our local management team work diligently to promptly resolve any issues. We have established procedures and protocols in place that include independent and government inspections and oversight to ensure necessary repairs are completed successfully. But Army officials from the Pentagon paint a much different picture. An Army spokesperson told me a recent tenant satisfaction survey for Fort Belvoir gave the Michaels Organization a score of 68.8, which is below average. Because of that, the company has until the end of the month to submit a corrective action plan. Still, the Army says if the company demonstrates, quote, substantial progress in resolving those issues, the Army won't have reason to terminate its contract with the company. As for the residents in need of help, a Fort Belvoir spokesperson says there is a 24-hour hotline to report issues, but Bragg and VDOT argue there still isn't enough oversight.
There's nobody really willing right now to make them do the right things.
Home is supposed to be a safe place. Why aren't we safe? Why aren't we being taken care of?
Questions both of these families are still waiting to have answered. In Washington, Samantha Manning, Channel 2 Action News.
1,000 soldiers are being moved to new housing on Fort Bragg after the Smoke Bomb Hill barracks were inspected earlier this month and found to have substandard conditions.
CBS 17's Dina Harley joins us now live. And Dina, you talked to one soldier today who lives there. What do they have to say?
Yeah, that soldier wanted to remain anonymous, but they tell me there was mold in the building and that no matter how much they cleaned that space, it never got better. We're talking about rodents, bugs, water damage, mold. That's what some service members living at Fort Bragg have dealt with in their barracks. That's according to one advocate that I spoke to today. Now, over 1,000 of those tenants will be moved to different housing after the Smoke Bomb Hill barracks were found to be in substandard conditions. But one service member that I spoke with today, who, like I said, wanted to stay anonymous, says they've been living in conditions for so long now that they're not very confident it will get better. Meanwhile, advocates say the soldiers who sacrificed their lives for our country are the ones who are suffering the consequences of living in those conditions. Now, on a call today, Fort Bragg officials said as of today, just 120 soldiers have moved out of the Smoke Bomb Hill barracks so far. Again, that's out of the over 1,000. Reporting live in studio, Dina Harley, CBS 17 News.
And honestly, Dina, we have been reporting on this for years about the problems at military bases and the mold and repairs not being made. And, you know, families have tried to file lawsuits. I mean, we'll see what happens, but hopefully this will remedy the problem.
Military families in Murphy Canyon are out of their homes tonight after toxic mold was discovered. One resident says her family was only told this morning that they would have to be out by tonight. News 8's Amanda Shonsky joins us live with their story. That's a big rush to get out of the house, Amanda.
Yeah, very stressful day for Kimberly Dunn, a mother who says that she just moved here back in February and things are stressful enough for her and her daughter with her husband deployed. Now they're going to have to stay in a hotel for several weeks, and they're not alone.
We have your stuff so we can do your daddy movies. So
Kimberly Dunn and her daughter Hope are quickly packing up their home in Murphy Canyon, not knowing when they'll return.
It's not something I was expecting within 9 months, having to go live in a hotel like right around the holidays.
The Dunns are one of several families who have to relocate from the Santo Terrace military housing community after toxic mold and mildew was discovered.
And that's where they originally saw something suspicious.
Pictures shared on a neighborhood social media page show thick black material in some of the vents. Some residents share stories of respiratory issues and illness due to the mold, saying this has been an issue for years. Kimberly says she was shocked, having moved in less than a year ago, just before her husband was deployed.
It's already stressful having someone gone and then relocating and doing all of that. It's not very easy.
The complex is managed by Lincoln Military Housing. It's offered to move those affected to a hotel while the problem is resolved.
So they're making us remove all the pictures.
But Kimberly says she was only given notice at 10 o'clock Thursday morning that they had to be out by midnight.
Lincoln says they're handling it, but it shouldn't have been an issue. I haven't been living here that long.
It's still unclear if they will have to spend the holidays away from home.
Everything's just chaotic. My house doesn't normally look like this. It's very clean and organized, and right now it looks like a hurricane went through it.
And we did reach out to Lincoln Military Housing for comment. So far, we have not heard back. Marcella?
All right, Amanda, thanks.
Tonight, a new report on disgusting conditions at military base housing across the country. For months, 8 on Your Side has been telling you about mold problems inside base housing at MacDill.
Now we're learning that there are military housing problems all across the country. And News Channel 8's Jeff Patterson reports a local attorney says fraud and illegal activity may be involved in an effort to cover up these problems.
Inside base housing here at MacDill, mold is a significant problem, reported by nearly 60% of the families. Now we are learning some of the conditions inside base housing are simply disgusting. A report from the Military Family Advisory Network surveyed military families at base housing across the country. The report found complaints of rats, roaches, and filthy living conditions, and little effort by private contractors to correct the problems. At MacDill, the problem is still mold.
It's obscene that it's like that. There are families that are continuing to report things even today. It's not resolved.
Tracy Lenz first told us about mold issues at her base house months ago. She went to Congress to talk about the problem. The Secretary of the Air Force flew here to talk about the mold issue. But Lenz and others say the problem is still there, and they've lost thousands trying to recover from it.
We've had nothing refunded or reimbursed or paid for despite any promises or meetings.
Attorney Natalie Quam with the Whistleblower Law Firm is representing some of the MacDill families with mold problems. She says it's not just negligence, there is fraud involved too.
Yes, I think there's fraud. I think there's illegal activity. I think there's a few crimes that were committed. I will be sharing this with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Natalie Quam says the cover-up has been far worse than the initial problem, but she is working to resolve both issues. Jeff Patterson, News Channel 8.
How many of you all have had mold in your homes? How many of you all have been displaced from your home? How many of you all have had you or your family members have health complications because of issues in your home?
Let that sink in. 5 women, different homes, different service branches, but their stories are similar. And the stories of mold, rodents, and lead paint in base housing are the experiences of thousands of military families across the country.
Our spouses are all serving their country and they're willing to die for their country. We should all, at the very minimum, be able to have a safe home
On Virginia's Fort Belvoir, desperation created a bond. The families of Army wives Amanda Brewer, Raven Roman, and Jessica Carmine, and Navy spouses Christy Wright and Ashley Fisher have experienced breathing issues, nosebleeds, and severe allergic reactions. They were so frustrated, they felt they had no choice but to create a housing advocacy group.
We have buy-in to these people. We are the community. The reason that we work is we are the community.
Fisher's family was moved to a hotel when mold was found in their home, all while her youngest son undergoes treatment for brain cancer. She says right now they have more than 350 people in their Facebook group.
I wish I could tell you that we were the exception, but we're kind of the norm.
What they believe is the norm are concerns with the way the private companies that own and manage their military housing get rid of mold. According to this Department of Defense document, during remediation, an area with mold needs to be physically separated from areas that aren't contaminated. It calls for barriers to be installed. But these pictures, taken by the women, show that does not always happen on Belvoir.
Containment is either breached, it's falling down, it's coming undone. So now these are possessions that we most likely will not be able to take with us.
All the women in this group say they experienced issues with how their mold remediation was handled.
Mold works by when you move it, spores kind of go everywhere, and every step that they take, every time they bounce, etc., then there's more and more spores going everywhere.
They aren't just talking about material losses, but memories.
We're losing things that we've had in our family and we've carried with us for most of my husband's military career. You know, those small personal things that can't be replaced.
Michael's Management Services is the private company that manages housing on Belvoir.
Hello, this is Ron Hansen.
Ron Hansen is the president of the company and headquartered in New Jersey, so he was not available for an in-person interview. He did agree to talk with us on the phone.
Do you think what the company is doing on Fort Belvoir is good enough for these families?
Well, obviously it's not good enough. We wouldn't be talking.
You find out that contractors are not performing this containment properly. What do?
We're paying them, and if we find out that they're not doing their job properly, then they get corrected or they get fired.
Hansen says they're making changes. Instead of taping containment, they're stapling it. They're treating water and mold as emergency maintenance issues and researching what more they can do to prevent these situations in the first place.
We're doing what we think is everything we can. And of course, you know, they may be pointing out there's things that they think we could do better. We hear what they're saying, and we're trying to improve our process at the same time.
For this group and the military families they represent, that process has made them doubt everything.
But I can't say that I don't check every week. Every time my kids get a stuffy nose, they start coughing, wheezing, the first thing I do is I pull up the vents. I check my HVAC system. Do we have mold yet? It's not, do we have mold? Do we have mold yet?
They're living with the fear that it's coming. It's coming. What does the Army say about this?
Well, Leslie, we reached out to the garrison in charge of Belvoir. He says they're working to earn back the trust of families, and they're holding themselves and the private companies accountable. We've put his full response along with our entire investigation, which we've been bringing you for months now, on our WUSA 9 app and website.